What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Trill Bro Dude, and today I am excited to have onto the podcast for the first time my buddy from Twitter, John Hill, who is from the Super Hoopers podcast on Blue Wire Podcast Network, and he's also currently doing a Kickstarter fundraiser. What is it?
Yeah, it's
what
a
is
Kickstarter.
It? Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. I didn't know which one it was for his new movie coming out called Above the Clouds. What's going on, John?
What's up, Trill? Thanks for having me. Wow, what an intro. Yeah, man.
I'm all over the place.
I know, it was great, man. Let me do a quick plug. It's abovethecloudfilm.com. I'm going to plug it now because after my takes, I think people will probably turn off this pod. So like, I gotta get in early. We can talk about it later, but we're raising money. I'm shooting my first film. It's about, it's very personal. It's about time in my life after my dad died. I come back to LA. I meet this stranger. We spend the day together. It's really good. We'll talk about it later, but we only got about 10 days left to reach our goal. Or Kickstarter gives you nothing. They don't give a shit about you. They're like, bro, you're first or you're last. You know what I mean?
Well, we'll put the link in the description for anyone that wants to donate, and we'll go later in the podcast. We'll talk a little bit more about the movie, but let's get to the thing that we all love and hate the most first. Our Philadelphia 76ers, once again, back in the news. Actually, not really in the news, because the news that happened is that Doc Rivers is not going to be the Lakers head coach. They hired Darvin Ham. Unfortunately, we are stuck with Doc Rivers for another year. I was clinging to hope on the last episode that we might be able to trick the Lakers into taking Doc, and LeBron and him could live forever in happiness. And, he can be the scapegoat there. And instead, we are now stuck with Doc. And I don't know how about you feel about it. I'm just like, I'm just done with Doc. And I really am just incredibly upset. Like, it just sucks to look around the playoffs and see all these young coaches who were assistants, and now we have the second straight year a former Sixers assistant is going to the finals with his new team, and then we're just we have a guy who hasn't made a conference final in over a decade, despite coaching 7 all-stars, and his team, the last team he left, was in the conference finals last year after he could never get them there. So I'm just kind of at the point where I'm incredibly disappointed and not looking forward to another season of the Doc Rivers experience.
Oh man, I feel that. It's like in Dumb and Dumber, where they're like 1,000,000 to 1, right? And you're like, so you're saying I have a shot? That was the Lakers for us. They're like, wait, so the general manager and Doc and everyone else in the organization said Doc's coming back. Yeah, but the Lakers haven't signed a coach yet. Who knows? Maybe we're good. Maybe we got a shot. And then it's just like, nah, it's not going to happen. I am less – look, I'm not a Doc guy. It's kind of a thing where people say, I do not love Doc. He's not my guy. But I do think that he's fine. That's where I put him at. And people say, the problem is when you say someone is fine, they think you like them. That's the thing. This is, the internet. I work in the internet. I work in sports on the internet. I know how this works. If you don't say I want to murder Doc Rivers in front of the Wells Fargo Center, then you are then you love him.
It's true. Yes. People are hyperbolic about Doc, especially.
Yeah, exactly. And it's look, I get it. I get all the problems with Doc, right? The late game stuff, the management, all that stuff. But I do think there's some stuff that it's kind of unfair to him, right? That I don't get, right? As I always have this fun issue with the Sixers because Sixers fans in general are lunatics. And as a reformed Philadelphian who has moved, I get to see the regular world once in a while, and I don't have to live in the Philadelphia world where lunacy makes sense, right? It's my favorite thing is the argument Doc Rivers doesn't play young guys, except our starting point guard was Tyrese Maxey, a very, very young guy. A guy who played in the playoffs last year. And it's
how many minutes did he play in Game 7?
Of what? This year?
Game 7 of last year, Doc Rivers played Tyrese Maxey. I believe it was a total of 9 minutes in Game 7 after he won them Game 6.
This okay, is but he won. Okay. Like my point is okay,
let's get into it.
Okay, I'm sorry that Charles Bassey, the 54th pick of last year's draft, wasn't the answer this year. You know what I mean? I think we
Paul
do this.
Reed was significally better than DeAndre Jordan and Paul Millsap in his minutes.
But he didn't play Millsap. He was yo, Millsap's watch. But I would also say this.
Why even give him a chance over Reed?
This is Morey's fault.
Yes,
Daryl Morey's fault,
100%.
Not Doc's fault. Let me I don't think that if you had put in Mike D'Antoni instead of Doc this year, we would have won the championship.
No, I agree.
So that's my thing. I get not wanting him there, but you're not going to get Spo, right? You're not going to get the greatest coach because the best coaches aren't being traded, and then and also it's coaching. We saw Brad Stevens go from being I'd trade a first round pick for him to being his team quit on him, to then him leaving and then having Emeka come in, and now they're in the finals. So it's sometimes coaches do a lot, sometimes they don't. I think it's just it's an easy excuse, but I would say this: if you think Doc is our biggest problem, you will be in for a rude awakening next year when
no, I agree with
the
that.
Next coach comes in and you're just what?
No, I do agree. My whole thing with the Doc situation is he's definitely not our biggest issue. I mean, this team was not good enough to win a title unless Joel Embiid and James Harden were both 100%. If you build a top-heavy roster and you have two guys who are star-level players and they're not 100% or they don't play up to the level that they can play, coaching probably won't matter. I agree with that. And generally speaking, I'm not a big coaching matters guy. My whole thing is we kind of already had that situation with Doc. I feel like the team quit on Doc. And I saw a tweet that was very interesting to me that someone had talked about, because we keep talking about we want dogs. We want a dog. Go get me Pat Beverly and go get me Marcus Morris and PJ Tucker. And someone dug up a tweet that was from after the bubble when the Clippers lost, they collapsed. They were up 3-1, they collapsed. And Marcus Morris and Patrick Beverly were both on those teams, or that team. And Patrick Beverly said after the game, I felt like we really just lacked the mental toughness. And I was okay, well, maybe that's just one instance of it, right? Then someone went back to 2013, dug up a article that had Paul Pierce in 2013 after the Celtics loss on a team that had Kevin Garnett on it and said we lack the mental toughness. Now, look, not all of this is on Doc, but I do think that I think if you're going to be a vibes guy, which is really what Doc is, he's a vibes guy. Yeah, he doesn't really game plan that great. He doesn't really develop guys great. He doesn't, he's not an X's and O's genius. He's just kind of someone that players generally respect. He can kind of have some feel throughout a game, throughout a season. When guys are out, they tend to the backups tend to play up a level, I would say, with Doc as coach.
That's true. That's very true.
I think that Doc would be perfect for a team that's trying to get to the next level. He's a good floor raiser as a coach is what I've said.
Absolutely. No, that's true. Yeah.
Someone said he's DeMar DeRozan almost, where DeMar will get you to the 6 seed, the 7 seed if you have a good team around him. But in the biggest moments, you probably don't want DeMar as your primary guy because of the flaws within his game. And Doc's very similar. Doc will get you to a level, and it's got to be taken over by other people and taken to that next level. I don't feel as though he gives you any advantages as a coach. That's my big thing with Doc.
And I agree with that. And that's why I would say I don't want him necessarily as our coach. That's again, him being fine is not an endorsement.
You love Doc Rivers.
I love
Take
Doc
accountability.
Rivers, right? Yeah, I'm taking accountability. And I agree with that. But I'd also say Pat Beverly, you need another man to tell you to be mentally tough. You're Pat Beverly, dude. KG, the person that stopped you from being mentally tough was the coach on the sidelines. Come on, get the fuck out of here, dude. At some point, you're a grown man making a lot of money, and it's on you. Unless you're ruining the team, which I don't think Doc does, you can I think you're absolutely right in that he's a floor raiser, because what he does do well is like, yes, maybe the last minute X's and O's aren't there, but you don't get there unless Tobias Harris is playing well. And Doc is a guy that can get someone like Tobias Harris, who's probably the worst contract in the league, to play at least good enough where you're not. We didn't complain about Tobias.
No, he was good.
He was fine, and he brings in all these assistant coaches. That's another strength he has. Is like, I think our assistant coach is probably the best in the league.
Very good. Very, very good.
Very good. He's always had
Sam
that.
Cassell,
So, like,
Dan Burke. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. Does he develop people? I don't know. Like, you could say maybe with Maxey he does. I don't know. That's always a tricky thing too. But yeah, I would love to get a better upgrade for him. I'm waiting to hear what the other options are that are better than him that are available. Because I don't believe D'Antoni. I don't believe.
No, I don't. The D'Antoni thing was always somewhat of a long shot to me. I thought that I wanted to be like I just want the Sixers to be like creative, and that's one of the things that I feel like if you want to talk about like more, like let's just talk a little bit about Morey, because once again, like I feel like there's a little bit of a psychosis when it comes to Daryl Morey, and like not Daryl himself necessarily, but like the people that defend him to the end of the world, where it's like in this decision, it's only ownership not wanting to pay. It could never be Morey saying that he doesn't, or he wants Doc as coach. It could never, ever, ever be that. He is never at fault. He is always the one that is making the correct decisions, and all the bad decisions are made by ownership. Like, okay, maybe that is not the case. Because I just want to bring up the fact that, like, Morey, when he signed DeAndre Jordan, which is something that you brought up, horrible decision.
Even know what Doc's gonna do.
Exactly.
You are like bringing cocaine to an addict. Like, what are you doing, Morey?
Yeah.
Like, I thought, here's my Illuminati. I thought he brought on DeAndre so that knowing Doc would play him,
right,
so that he could fire Doc.
But that's what I was going to get into.
He didn't do it.
But my point is that it's like I said at the time, don't sign bad players.
No.
That's bottom line. Don't ever sign a bad veteran player, especially when Doc Rivers is your coach. You know he's going to play him. But once again, most people had this theory. Most people said this. And then I'm like, is it possible that Daryl Morey just made a stupid decision?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, that's what's happened. Like, we can't just like give him outs every time. It's like this 7-dimensional chess where he's going to give Doc the wrong guys. We already had Millsap on the roster. He would have played Millsap if he didn't have DeAndre. Like, that is the thing that I didn't really get. And like, look, Morey's going into his third year now. Doc's going into his third year now. I think that this is kind of make or break for both of them, to be honest, because I think that I'm not saying that I think that Morey and Doc should be fired immediately, but what I'm saying is year one, we'll give you a little bit of a pass. Okay. You're trying to figure some things out. You're bringing in some new guys, whatever, like, this is your first year. Year two, you make your big move, you go all in, you try to actually, that's kind of my biggest problem with Morey is the half measures is like, the first year, he made them into a really good regular season team, but didn't care as much about as what would happen in the playoffs. The second year, he goes for the guy that will help you in the playoffs, and he kind of makes an all-in move, but then he makes no periphery moves that could kind of build out the rest of the roster. Didn't even really attempt to make them, it seemed. And because of that, like, now we're in year three, and it's like, all right, how many teams in the Eastern Conference do you feel like we're better than? Because maybe in the regular season, I could say like we're better than most teams. But when it comes to the playoffs, like, I don't feel 100% great until I see what they do this offseason. So like, I think that this is kind of where I start to really judge Daryl Morey's tenure and be like, okay, you got your star, you got your guy. Now show us where you can be creative. Because he hasn't really been creative.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on, there's two things I want to touch. I agree with you on the Morey stands. It's like a weird thing. Like, that's my thing with like the Hinkie cult. Yeah. It's like I promise you this, right? And we can bet whatever we want. If the Celtics win, some deranged Sixers Hinkie fan will post a photo of Nick Stauskas and say Hinkie. I guarantee you. They slobber Hinkie's knob so hard that they will somehow Nick Stauskas on the
He
bench
knew.
in Celtics they'll be like, he knew. Wait, like this is Adam Silver's fault. This is Adam Silver's fault. Like somehow. Like
well, we'll get a leak. We'll get a leak that he actually would have drafted Tatum over Fultz, even though he wasn't the
absolutely 100%. Like someone
I
will
love
find a
those
photo
leaks.
of him at Summer League 3 days before Tatum played. He'll be like, there it is. We knew. It's Adam Silver's fault. That fucking snake. Like what?
Yeah. The point is, deifying executives is just it's kind of weird.
It's weird, especially when you meet these guys. These guys are weirdos.
Oh,
I met
100%.
Hinkie multiple times. That guy's like, we're just like, yo, okay, like he was nice. Like I don't think he was creepy or anything like that. But you're like, I don't know. There's probably some other cooler dudes out there that you should like be looking up to. Like,
they're business brain guys. They're success brain.
Yeah. And I agree with that with Morey. I will say with Morey though, I think year one was fixing all of Elton Brand's mistakes.
For sure. Well, the collective front office's mistakes.
I am Mr. When they signed Elton Brand, I was like, this is what is going to set us back for generations. I am so anti Elton Brand. Like he stole $150 million from us as a player. I don't know what they're paying him now, but he made every single thing that we thought was like the bad decision to do, right? Like everything, it's weird. Like everything that we thought like the Colandros were going to come and do, like Brand actually did.
It's true.
You know? Now, I'm not saying Colangelo wouldn't have done it before the Burnergate thing. Like maybe he got fired before he had a chance to really mess things up. But like trading young players and picks for like an overpriced guy in Tobias Harris, like who was bidding? Who was knocking down the door to pay that guy the max?
No one.
Like who was like, yo, what? Oh, well, we'll give you like 3 firsts for this dude or 2 firsts in Landry Champ. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? Like for fucking Tobias Harris, like
for the opportunity to max Tobias Harris.
Opportunity to max him. We just want that chance.
Privilege.
Give us the chance. Give us the privilege. How many firsts do you need? It's like, oh, we have Jimmy Butler. Like, nah, I'm him and Brett Brown don't get along. I think I'm gonna keep Brett Brown.
The coach that we were gonna fire during the playoffs, and then right after, like none of any of these stories. I think eventually someone will come out with like a full detailed book on that offseason. Because nothing will ever make sense to me from that offseason.
It's wild. Like I will say, I was such a Ben Simmons fan that it made me think. Like I was like, okay. Look, I never was a Jimmy Butler's going to Miami to retire. Like that was crazy. Like dude could play.
Oh, I literally might have invented that.
Oh, that you might have invented that. That's a great bit.
I can't remember, but I leaned into it for sure.
It's a great bit, but I was like, Jimmy Butler's still really good, and he's
of course,
he's still really good. But like, man, like the amount of mistakes that Elton Brand did, like, and the only good thing he did was draft a person who ended up being an anti-vaxxer. That's like his claim to fame. It's like, I screwed it up. I told everyone I was drafting this guy. It made me have to trade a pick to get him. Oh yeah, by the way, he doesn't believe in vaccines because he's, I don't know, 24, an adult, and graduate. He went through 4 years of college and doesn't believe in vaccines.
Speaking of half measures,
half measures, right?
Maybe that's why Morey likes him.
Like whenever Kyrie does something, I'm like, yeah, he went to like college for like 3 months and dropped out. Like I get that. Like I'm like, okay, like all right, that's what he's, and he's like, I get that. But like, like Thibault, 4 years, you graduated with a degree. Like, what are you doing?
He's a himbo.
What?
He's a himbo. He's a male bimbo.
Oh my god, he is so lucky. He's handsome. He is so lucky that dude's handsome. Very true.
And creative too.
And very creative. Yeah. I get it. Hey, look.
What's going on, guys? I am very excited to announce that Philly Sports Trips is now the official travel partner of the You Know Ball podcast. The biggest reason why I've partnered with Philly Sports Trips is really simple. I give them my money. I have a mini vacation that involves the Sixers, Eagles, and Phillies, and I don't have to lift a finger to plan anything. I can party as light as I want or as hard as I want, and Philly Sports Trips takes care of everything that I hate. The planning, the organizing, researching where to go, and I get a 5-star hotel, non-crazy flight schedules, and tailgates that have unbelievable food and booze, and most importantly, it's a douchebag-free zone. These are just some of the many reasons that I am excited to partner with Philly Sports Trips. I can't wait to go on a Sixers trip next season, and Uniball is absolutely going on the road to at least one Eagles game. So let me know which Eagles game you would want to go to, and I would love to do a huge Uniball road trip. Out of all the cities, I'm thinking New York or Chicago, but I want to know what you guys think as well. So tweet at me at TrillBroDude, DM me, comment on the YouTube, and let me know which Eagles game you guys think we should go as a group this season. Phillies and Eagles trips are booking right now. So head over to phillysportstrips.com and let them know that Uniball sent you for two very important reasons. Not only does it help fund the podcast, but we'll have VIP events and goodies specifically just for Uniball listeners. phillysportstrips.com, premium travel for every Philly sports fan, and a proud sponsor of the Uniball podcast.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's been rough, and so I'm very curious to see what Morey does. I also think, again, it's like giving Doc DeAndre is like Morey getting James Harden, right? Like is Morey reading the CBA right now to find out ways to pay Harden even more money of our cap space? Like, I wouldn't be surprised, right? Like he's going to give him a lot of money.
I hope he figures out some NFT back channel where he can just send whatever into a fund so that it's off the books. But
Harden seems like a straight cash kind of guy, right?
He does, yeah.
He doesn't have an agent. He doesn't have an agent. He's just like, yeah, no. Just Morey. Just give me all the money. Just
no agent, no internet. He's off the grid. Yeah,
he's off the grid.
Yeah,
and Morey just loves him.
But the thing about this offseason will be a real test because we'll get to see if Morey is the creative GM that he once was. And look, he's had some great, drafting like 2020, he knocked it out of the park. Yeah, the Ben Simmons situation, I think he made the best of it at the end of it. I think all throughout he could have handled it better. I think at the end he did the best that he possibly could. So, this is kind of, he can kind of redeem himself this offseason. And one of the things that people keep saying to me, and look, don't get me wrong, there are people that have this opinion about we just have to get rid of the Tobias contract and we just have to get guys in here. And we just I've heard people who I respect and say, can we get Eric Gordon? And I'm like, try something different. That's my whole thing. It's exactly. Morey, you sign, if you want to sign PJ Tucker and trade for Eric Gordon this offseason, you're literally just trying to get the band back together, but with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey around it. And they're good players, don't get me wrong, but once again, not every team is built exactly the same. This team, we need to focus on three specific things this offseason. We need to focus on having defenders who can actually stay on the court offensively, so no more thigh balls. We need to focus on getting guys who are versatile that can play multiple positions so that you can have flexibility within your lineups. And then the third thing is that you need to build out a deep enough team that Joel Embiid doesn't have to put the whole fucking team on his back, or James Harden doesn't have to put the whole fucking team on his back for months at a time, so that by the time we get to the postseason, we're all good. We're as healthy as we possibly can be. We're rolling into the playoffs feeling good. We have depth, chemistry, we have options, we have flexibility, we have all of that shit. So those are the main things that I look towards for this offseason for Morey.
I don't know if you did it on purpose, but I think it is great projection that you've left out backup center.
I think
which is every single GM for the Sixers for the last 5 years have done, right?
I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I really don't, because my whole thing with the backup center thing, and it continues to be, anytime your best player is off the court, you're going to be worse.
Yeah,
it's just
that's true. That is true.
I don't think that the Cavs were worried about LeBron's backup for I think that it does matter, and I think not having a complete negative in that position matters for sure. But between Reed, Bassey, veterans minimums, maybe if you get another second round pick, there are ways to figure out. You just can't give Doc the horrendous, just plotting backup center that he wants to play, and you can kind of figure it out going into next season. I think that they'll be fine. I'm very high on, I think Paul Reed proved me wrong. I was skeptical that his skill set would translate to the playoffs, let alone, or the NBA, let alone the playoffs. I think he's playable and he's going to get better. And who knows with Bassey? Like, I like Bassey a lot. Like, I just think that they can kind of figure that stuff out. Whereas the bigger question marks to me are like, okay, can we get someone who can guard the Jason Tatums and the Giannis's and the Jimmy Butlers and the whatever, and then on the other side, they're not absolutely hemorrhaging points.
Yeah, I would love to see a backup that could also just hit a three.
That's fine.
Just like, please. Like, I feel like there's so many of them out there that destroy us that, like, how can we not find one? You know, like, I just feel like the Celtics always have a backup five that somehow hits three. Hits.
We should get Al Horford,
right? Yeah. I wonder. Yeah, what's he up to? Is he? What's he gonna make if they win 26 million or something?
Yeah, Elton Brand masterclass, dude. He got Al Horford. He got his old teammate paid again for this. You know, he saw the vision. He knew that eventually he was going to get back to Boston and help them get to the finals and make a ton of money. I mean, look, good for Al Horford. I mean, I hate his guts, and his sister, but it's fine.
Can I give you a terrible take? Can I give you a terrible, because you brought him up?
Give me one.
I think I'm buying Thibault stock while it's low.
Do not do that.
I think I am. I know this. I preference it as a terrible take. I don't want this take. Thibault to me, like, at first was like, there was a point this year, Trill, where I was debating who I loved more, Tyrese Maxey or Matisse Thibault. Like early in the year, where I was like, man, I just love, like, they both as people, as like characters, like I love defense. I love defense. It's like this guy, he goes out there and he just fucking plays defense, and he'll pluck you and he'll get a steal and he'll two-handed dunk, and it's like, oh, and this guy's like, he does videos. I do videos. We'd probably be best friends. He used to date Zendaya. Who else does, like, he's probably the coolest dude. And then he just like fell apart so damn hard. But I will say this. I do think, remember, his shooting has not gotten better, but I don't think he's had proper off seasons, right? You had the COVID year. That was weird. Then you had him playing for Australia, you know, so I really want to see him have a real offseason where he left the year embarrassed, right? I'm a big believer that you need to hit rock bottom. That's how you get better. You need to like we see this with Joel every year, right? Like, he gets in the playoffs, he gets his ass kicked, and he comes back so much stronger, right? Because he experiences the pain and realizes, I'm not good enough, right? This is what happened with LeBron, right? He plays the Mavs and he's like, yo, I got to mix this up. Like, I thought I was one thing. I'm clearly not. I'm embarrassed. I got to take the next step. I think that could be Thibault this year, right? Which is the opposite of what Ben Simmons had, right? That's why I hated Ben Simmons, because he never and I always said that. I said this from day one. I was like, Ben Simmons needs to get horrendously embarrassed for him to go, hey, I'm not in high school anymore. I'm not just the athletic guy. I need to learn to shoot. I got to take this serious, because he never took it serious. And it just never happened. And that's why, like, 2 years ago, I was saying we got to trade Ben Simmons. And people thought I was a lunatic. This was before the pass. I was on team trade Ben Simmons for Tyrese Halliburton way back in the day. And everyone thought I was a lunatic. They're like, that's the dumbest thing ever. And I was like, just watch. Just watch. I know people after 5 years, if you still can't shoot, then you are not trying.
No.
And now he's too broken.
Okay, I'll say this much. I understand that. And I feel like a boomer saying this. I just don't really think he cares about basketball. And I've said this over and over. Like, the guys that are built that way, like, you know, from day one, dude. I'm not saying people can't change, but what I am saying, I used to be a piece of shit, but no, like, like people can change over time for sure. But, like, I don't know. He's 25 going on 26 years old. You have the fact that, like, from day one, I felt like Tyrese Maxey was a guy who had that built in.
Absolutely.
Was like, just like, couldn't get him out of the gym, whatever. And once again, I'm not anti this mindset when it comes to work. It's your job. Do whatever you want. That's fine. I'm not like waking up every day like, oh, I'm super passionate to go to work today. But at the same time, I'm also not a professional basketball player. And if I'm building my team, I want to have guys who want to get better. I want to have guys who are working on their game in the offseason, regardless of whether they have weird things going on. Because I know that there are guys in those off seasons that came back better despite the circumstances. And I think that one of the things with Thibault is like, if you're in year 3, and every time you touch the ball in the playoffs, you're just trying to get rid of it immediately, that's a really bad sign.
It's a very bad sign.
And I'm like, I just want to invest in players who have the mindset of like, I want to work hard, get better, and I want to invest in guys who can play on both sides of the court. And in the playoffs, they step their game a little bit up instead of stepping their game significantly down. So, I mean, look, if he works on his shot this offseason, I just don't believe he will. I just don't. I think that he'll do whatever he does every offseason. He'll come back and he'll be the same player. And then you're looking at a situation where he's an expiring contract and you have to extend him. Like, to me, this is the last time you can get real value before teams realize we're going to have to pay this guy and we don't even know what he is, or we know what he is and it's not what we want it to be.
I agree with that completely. Like, I do agree with that. I do think he will come back. This is why I said it was a terrible take. Don't get me wrong. It's a terrible take. But this is why I would buy stock in him. And maybe it's the reverse, right? I'd buy stock in him, and if it results in him being a trade chip, then great. Like, if you were like, yeah, like if I was the Kings, if I was like OKC, one of these guys that are like, we have a little more time with this guy. Right. You're coming in with an all defensive player. Like, we know that. Like, what was he, second team this year, right?
Yeah, second straight year.
So, like, I don't know. I would say I think we as a fan base are extra down on him. And I'd buy low. Whether it's us buying low or another team buying low.
Yeah. Like and maybe if I were the Pelicans and I have Fred Vincent as my shooting coach, and I'm like, yeah, I see that I might be able to make him into like a PJ Tucker level shooter, then sure, that's different. One of my biggest frustrations with the Sixers is they've never invested in that. They don't like. I don't even know if they have a shooting coach.
Does anyone have an insight to that? Can we ask
can you send me a DM?
Can we ask Kyle Newbeck to walk around and just say like, are you the shooting coach? Yes or no?
Just go up to random guys.
Just go to every single person and then let us know if one person said yes. Like, how is this so hard?
Can we steal Kyle Korver from the Brooklyn Nets? Because he taught Bruce Brown how to shoot, and Bruce Brown became a pretty decent three-point shooter this year. And also, at one point, the Nets traded us Kyle Korver for a copy machine. So I think that would be fantastic just to relive that history.
How about this? Take whatever how to shoot book that the Spurs have and just copy that. Literally use the copy machine, print out 15 copies.
Levels to this.
Levels to this shit. Like, how is the shooting coach not the most expensive person on the team? How do you not go to what's his name? Chip
Englund. I know Chip Englund and I know Fred Vincent. Those are the two that I know.
How do you not go to them and be like, what are you getting paid? $1 million? It's probably not $1 million. And just like, all right, we'll give you $1 million.
It's like probably like $100,000 a year or something.
Like, why is that not the thing?
You should like the Raptors shooting coach should get paid $500,000 a year.
Like, give him more. Seriously, as an investment, if you're like, yo, wait, I had Ben Simmons, he could do everything. I have Thibault, and for like an extra $600,000 a year that we're gonna spread out over 15 people, and it's a write-off. Like, why wouldn't you put money into that? It makes the most sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me that it's not something that maybe they do behind the scenes. I know that they've brought in more development guys because one of the things is like when you have no room to work with because you have Joel Embiid on his crazy big contract, Tobias Harris on his, James Harden on his, like you really have no flexibility on the margin. So like investing stuff into second round draft picks and things like the Heat and the Raptors do, like teams that are just like, we gotta win on the margins plus win at the top. Like we gotta have the top end talent, but we also have to win on the margins. That is something that I feel like they are trying to do. But once again, I don't know if Doc is the coach for that. Because like maybe all of this stuff is happening behind the scenes and we just never get to see it in games because Doc just has a way that he wants to go about things. Maybe I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I would love to just go in and see if they're like ever. I've never seen, like, I used to see videos of Ben Simmons like shooting jumpers, and like since he got to the Nets, like, you know, every summer, like we'll get some this off season. Well, you know, we'll all collectively laugh now, but like I've never seen a video of that with Thibault. Like, I don't think I've ever seen one from practice. I don't think I've ever seen
a camera
one
with him.
Yeah,
we know he has a camera. Like, bro, you got a tripod. Just set that shit up in the corner. Like,
literally,
edit. Like, you know how to edit. Just edit out all the misses. Come on, man.
This
is up your wheelhouse. Fire up Premiere Pro.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I would pay the shooting coach $1 billion.
Yes. So if you're a shooting coach and you're listening to this, just literally just hire Drew Hanlon. I just watched Jason Tatum, who was like a chucker in college, and like now he always had a good base skill set to work with. He was always a very good free throw shooter, but like now he's one of the best shooters in the NBA, and he just led his team to the finals. Like, we can't just be like, look, Drew, we'll give you like, you're not making $1 million off of you're making a lot of money. You're not making $1 million a year. We can get you $1 million a year.
$1 million.
Yeah, you can be there. You go. Like, you can hang out with Joel all the time if you want. Maxie will be your friend. Like, come on, like Drew, like do it, please. Drew Hanlon, if you're listening, become the Sixers shooting coach.
$1 million. $1 million. Yeah.
He's like, I want to deal with Sixers fans all the time. I had the Fultz situation. I'm good. You fucking psychos.
Dude, I've been to his gym. I've seen him train people.
Pure Sweat.
And, yeah, it's like in a little ass like high school gym. It's not fancy. It's really. I can tell you a story. I can tell you a story off the air. A funny one. I can't say it on air. But
all right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. But you know, it's about the work that happens in the house. It's not about the size of the house. You know,
right?
There's grinded in there.
But hey, man, you could get a really nice house if you're a shooting coach, Drew. We'll give you $1 million.
There you go. Sixers shooting coach Drew Hanlon. It has a nice ring to it. Yeah. Okay. So 2 quick things before we get into some other stuff. You saw Joel Embiid's tweets, I'm assuming, right? About the games.
About soccer, right? About Real Madrid?
Real Madrid. 100%. Yeah. He's actually covertly trying to get Luka to come to the Sixers, because Luka played for Real Madrid, and he's a Real Madrid fan.
Ooh.
So he was tweeting about them so they can have a bonding experience. That's my
Trilluminati. I like this.
That's right. I literally had a podcast called Trilluminati at one point, so I appreciate that reference. Yes.
Oh, okay. So
stay woke. You didn't even know that.
I didn't even know. I really don't want to go to the archives for that one.
Because Embiid doesn't actually recruit. I just have to make up shit in my head to make myself feel better about it.
Yep,
speaking of recruiting, in the tweets, he's saying, you know, Miami needs another star. And everyone's like, oh no. I tweeted out the Jordan Peele gif where he's just drenched in sweat. Like, what are we going to do? Like, I do think that I'm going into this year saying we need to make the Eastern Conference Finals, because if we don't make the Eastern Conference Finals, Joel Embiid, if he's not already looking around, he's certainly getting to the point where he's probably like, all right, let's make some moves. Let's do some shit. Let's make this into a legit contender, because I don't know what Miami's going to do this offseason. I don't think that they're going to make a big splash trade unless someone becomes available and says, send me to Miami. Like, if in free agency they got like Zach LaVine or something, that would be horrible for us. But also, especially because he's just like such a Heat culture guy, like works really hard. His dad was a pro football player. Like, you know, like he would buy in. He'd probably become a good defender somehow. And we would have multiple teams we'd have to go up against with these two-way wings who can score and defend and whatever. But unless something like that happens, like, I do think that like Jimmy has been flirting with him from afar, and Joel and Jimmy have this like public relationship that's like, if he were to ever ask for a trade, I do feel as though it would probably be to Miami. And I think Jimmy's too stubborn to ever come back to Philadelphia after everything that happened. So if they did want to ever play together again, it would have to be in Miami. And like, we'll see what Miami does this offseason, because the East is going to be much better next year. And Jimmy might get to the point where he's like, all right, you know, Bam Adebayo, good player. I need a great player to play with in order to win a title. And those two together is my nightmare in Miami, because I hate the Heat. And I was rooting for them to win the Eastern Conference Finals just because I didn't think they had a shot against the Warriors, and I think the Celtics do. But I am I will say the tweets, he tweeted afterwards like, "Oh, Boston just has too many weapons." Like he's just doing commentary on the game. Like, "Oh, no, yeah, oh," and then he sends out like the laughing face emojis. I'm definitely starting to get a little bit nervous, though. I'll say that much.
I'm not that nervous. I think Joel is a troll. I think he loves this stuff. He knows what he's doing, right? And I think, look, Sixers fans are also easily the most triggered fans in all of sports. Like you can say anything and they will lose their fucking minds. Like I think it's like, and I think it's like sometimes I think with Joel, it's like, hey, sometimes you guys boo me, and so sometimes I'm gonna boo you back, and this is how I boo you back, and it's harmless, and it's like I just want you guys to shit your pants once in a while, because I like to do that, like it, and I think the give and take is fair. Like if we're allowed to boo Joel, who is literally playing with a broken face sometimes, then I think he's allowed to like poke back at us. But the truth is, like, I think we do this thing sometimes where like so much of what actually like the worry of stars leaving and things like that, so much of what actually happens is out of anyone's hands and it's all just random, right? Like we've seen this time and time again, right? Like even with like the Celtics, right? Like right now, like everyone's like, oh, Celtics, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bro, I'm going to be that guy. Like they played every team that was hurt. Like we are glancing over the fact that they had to go to 2 Game 7s where the other team didn't have their second or third best player. Like as much as like you want to say like Chris Middleton's whatever, like that dude's their second best player.
Yeah.
And like, and same thing with the Heat. Like, oh, you beat us. Joel didn't have a face. Like he literally didn't, like he's playing with a broken face, and sometimes like that's just the way things happen. So like next year, like where are we at? I don't know. Like, does Jimmy Butler get hurt? Are they the Miami Heat of this year, or are they the Miami Heat of last year getting swept in the first round? And then if they're getting swept in the first round, is Joel really trying to go there?
True.
Is Joel ever going to play a playoffs where he's not injured?
Yep.
That's something too. Like Joel, like as much as Joel can complain about like, oh, we got to be a contender. We have to be a contender, right? Like I get that attitude. Like, hey man, like that's on you. Like we're a contender if you're not hurt in the playoffs. When you are hurt, we're not a contender. That's like, that's just it, man. Like I know you want us to be a contender, but like, and look, obviously it wasn't his fault he broke his face, but like we're not worried about like, Danny Green's injury. Like it's you, man. Like you got to step up and I don't know. I would have to look at the numbers, but I feel like he doesn't necessarily step up in the playoffs. Like you might know this better than me.
I mean, look,
he's got some good games, but like,
look, he doesn't have a signature run. I mean, it's not like
right?
like this felt like it was going to be the first time where he was able to have a signature run. We get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
That Toronto shot. That was his move.
That's what felt like it kind of set things off, right?
Yep.
Then he gets hurt. He gets hurt in that game, and then he gets hurt in the last game because we can't like wrap up the series and all that shit. And like, look, like if people are down on Joel Embiid right now that are not Sixers fans, I really can't blame them because part of being an all-time great player is literally being able to play in the playoff games and like, or at least be 100% in those playoff games. And like, it does feel as though like he's never played a full playoffs. Like every single year he misses at least 2 games.
Yep.
And if that's the case, we're not winning shit. So I do think that, and the numbers do dip a little bit. I think that the numbers dip a little bit, but I couch that a little bit with he was not the same guy until last year that he is now.
Yeah, that's very fair. That's very fair. He's a different player.
Yeah. And he made a leap. And in that Atlanta series, which we lost, we won the minutes with Joel on the court by a pretty significant margin. He averaged 30 points a game on insane efficiency and played great defense. Like, all things considered, could he have been better in Game 7? Yes. Could he have been better in Game 4? Yes. 100%. Totally agree. But a large amount of the time when Jason Tatum scores 12 points for the Boston Celtics, they have guys on that team that can make up for when Jason Tatum scores 12 points. Like, he had one or two games this series where he was legitimately not good, and the other 5 he was very good. And like Joel's had the same thing against, I would say, weaker opponents. Yeah. And I would say that, like, if he doesn't have this signature run either next year or the following year or whatever it is, then I do think that you can start to criticize his playoff resume as a whole, because it's not very good. Like, except for the post leap when he was healthy, which is like 8 games, 9 games. Like, it's not a large sample.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like not too worried about him leaving per se. Cause like for him to like leave, then he has to pull like what Jimmy Butler did this year and be like, I gave it every single thing I can and I dominated, and James Harden and Tobias Harris just aren't good enough, and we're stuck with their contracts. So like, on the Super Hoopers, they asked, they're like, oh, how do you feel going in? I was like, look, I feel, going into the playoffs, I felt really good, but I was like, but I also know that you have Doc, Embiid, and Harden, and all 3 of them sometimes just don't show up for the playoffs. So it's like a real thing. But I also will couch that by saying that I don't necessarily believe that kind of thing. Because like, look, we used to say that about Kyle Lowry, right? That guy falls apart and then comes
Dirk Nowitzki.
Yep. And then with the Raptors, you saw it was Lowry who won that series over, like, Kawhi was like hobbling.
Yeah, he was bad. By the end, it was really that game 6 was Siakam and Lowry carried them.
And so like the only so I don't think that's necessarily a thing. Like, I don't quite get that. Unless you're CP3, then I absolutely believe it.
Then you're just cursed.
Then I believe it. I will slander CP3 all the time.
Well, he's also 37, and like his playoff resume isn't really that bad. It's just like a handful of really bad moments and like injuries and shit. And like that's kind of what defines a lot of people's careers, even if they end up one of the 30 best players of all time, whatever he is. Like, and I do think that, like, when it comes to this whole like big picture thing, you could, like you said, like you can rewrite your story. Like you could, like, Jimmy Butler was not thought to be like a playoff killer until the bubble, really. Like, we knew that he was like, he had moments in the playoffs where we were like, oh shit, like Jimmy Butler, like in that Raptor series, he had like 2 or 3 games where you were like, wow, like he can like really like carry an offense from time to time and whatever. But ultimately, until the bubble happened, no one was like playoff Jimmy, and he was 20 or he's 30 years old. Like, and now he's 32, and he actually just had, for the first time in his career, his numbers went significantly up in the playoffs instead of like staying around the same. Like, even when it was the bubble, even when it was 2019, his numbers were about the same that they were in the regular season. Like, he was essentially having the same amount of impact, but the thing is that he would have these really high highs. And that's what he did again this year, where like he'll have the 45-point, almost triple-double game, and you're like, holy shit. And then he'll have a game where you're like, all right, he scored 12 points. This is why he isn't considered in that top 5 level player, because it's just not consistent enough. And like Joel, maybe it's due to injuries, maybe it's just due to like, it's hard to build around a center in the modern NBA and have that as like your main guy when it comes to playoff time. Maybe it's just like, maybe he won't ever get to the point where he's just like that good and healthy in the playoffs. But like, he need, like, the Toronto moment was like probably his first signature moment in the playoffs. Like, I think that he was ultimately, like, our run got cut short because of the injury, and I think people really respect the fact that he played through that injury, and I think that they will cut him some slack because of that. Same thing that they're doing with Jimmy Butler right now, which is like, look, he was like battling through injuries, like he was trying to carry the team, but like, I do think that, like, moving forward, if Joel were to ever get to the point where he would like think about leaving the Sixers, he definitely would have to have, like you said, like I put everything out there. I was busting my ass. I was carrying us through this, and not just like I was a beast defensively and like we won the minutes. Like, no, I took over games and like no one could fucking stop me.
Yeah, exactly. So look, we got to see it, Yeah, I mean, he should have been the MVP this year.
Yeah, he didn't even get first team.
That's to me is crazy. And I told I'm gonna name drop. Told KOC. I told KOC because he said he voted for Jokic, right? And I told him, I was like, look, man, I was like, I get that, but here's the thing. We don't know, and this is not the voters' fault, but we never know if Joel will ever be this healthy again and put together a season like this where he can win the scoring title. And like, are you as a voter going to say you never got a chance to vote for Joel as MVP? You know what I mean? Like that could be a miss on you. And he was like, that's a fair point. Because it's like, I don't think you can tell the story of this year without talking about Joel Embiid. Jokic, like, were you ever like, ooh, Nuggets are on tonight, must see TV? But no, you did it. You did it when we played the Warriors. You did it when we played the Nets, right? The storyline, him getting hit in the face, him hitting that game winner. It was like, this was his year. And I just, it's like, fingers crossed we get more years of this, because it was the year he didn't get hurt. And it was so damn fun and so exciting. And I just hope we get more seasons of that.
Yeah, I mean, I had someone, Francis Zomes, who I've brought up.
Yeah, I follow him on Twitter. He's really good on Twitter.
Yeah, so Francis had a great thing about how he can like picture the articles being written next season when it's like Joel Embiid stopped caring about individual awards and he's playing the best basketball of his life, kind of thing. Where it's like he does the load management thing more. He's healthier. He's fresher. He's caring more about defense than offense, and he can kind of be a part of the offense instead of the entire hub of the offense. And look, like I've said it before, I'll say it again. I would rather him preserve his own health so that he's available when the games really matter and when your legacy is defined, and not against the Orlando Magic dropping 50 points in February, which is extrememely impressive. Don't get me wrong. He did it in like 30 minutes. He was fucking unbelievable.
That was wild.
But also like Jokic and Embiid and Giannis, like they can do that pretty much anytime they want in the regular season. Like it's fucking light work to them.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
And it's the reason why like Luka, who kind of just like half-assed the first half of the season, was just like, whatever, and was still amazing because he's Luka, but like just was like, I'm gonna turn it on for the fucking playoffs, and like I'm gonna show that I'm a motherfucker, basically. And I wish that Joel had that attitude, and I think that this season will hopefully the lesson he'll take from it is that being healthy for the playoffs is the most important thing. And if you want to create a legacy, that's where you create your legacy. And it's not in these games that honestly no one really cares about. But I host a basketball podcast, and by January I'm like, all right, trade deadline playoffs, let's go.
Right.
You get it.
You get it. You're really good. You score points. Yeah, exactly. I just hope Maxey becomes that guy.
Yes,
I think Maxey can be that guy. And he's the one I'm super, super excited for. I know you were early on him. I remember being super, super early on him. That's probably one of my greatest takes.
Yeah.
But you were right. Like I watched what's his name? Mike Schmidt, right? Who is now the assistant. Schmidt. Yeah. Assistant something to the Nuggets. Is that it?
Yes. Or to the Blazers.
Blazers, that's right.
Yes, assistant GM.
I watched an interview with him. And I was like, who is this like 19-year-old kid that's in the gym at 5 a.m. every day? And I agree 100% what you said. There's some people that this is all they love.
Yeah.
And he was talking about like his shooting angle and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, this guy like gets it.
Yep.
And I'm so glad he fell to us. And I think I can't wait till he realizes that he's the guy. Like he started getting that earlier this year. And then I think when they threw in James Harden, he was like, okay, well, where am I now? I hoped in the offseason, everyone kind of comes in being like, all right. Like it is hard to win a championship when you trade for a big star like that late. You know what I mean? Like this year was always going to be difficult to win it all. But I hope they come into this year being like, all right, here's the deal. And Maxey's like, all right, so I got to be the guy sometimes. And it's like, yeah, man. Yeah. Like Harden ain't the guy. Harden ain't the guy anymore. He'll pass you the ball, but you got to be the guy. And that's what I'm really looking forward to.
And I do think that he's going to come back. Like, if you told me we're sitting here 8 months from now and we're talking about Tyrese Maxey in the All-Star game, like potentially, like I'm not like, I really don't want to put a limit on this kid's ceiling, because it's like actually a smooth transition to what I want to talk about next, which is the fact that like the franchise basically leaked to Kyle Neubeck and Paul Hudrick and all of the great beat writers that cover the team that were like, yeah, we're not trading Maxey. Like, he's part of our future plans. Like, unless Giannis becomes available tomorrow, he's good. Like, and that is the kind of thing that I keep sound like a fucking broken record on this podcast, but like, one of the things that I constantly talk about is the fact that I would rather lose with a guy like Tyrese Maxey than win with certain guys like that are not as enjoyable to root for. Like, there are guys that are like more talented and more like, they're these massive wings that can score and do whatever. But like, I find pleasure in rooting for Tyrese Maxey, and I enjoy watching him play basketball more than maybe any Sixer that I can ever remember, including like my favorite guys, like obviously Embiid and Iggy and Iverson and whoever I've watched throughout my life. Like, it really does feel as though investing in this kid and like giving him more, I don't want to say like free reign, but like more reigns over everything, that like he can be more of a primary guy.
Yeah.
When Joel and Harden are on the bench, he can be a secondary guy with them. He can be flexible. He can be the guy some nights he's not. And he's just going to want to do whatever it takes to get better and whatever it takes to win. And I feel like the next level for him really is like, I think if he just works on his handle, like, cause like his passing and playmaking isn't great. And like, he has moments where I'm like, whoa, like he'll make like a read or like a little skip pass. And I'm like, all right, like he has the passing flashes, like like he processes the game quick enough that like, I think he could get to a level where he's like a good playmaker passer.
Yeah.
But like, the next thing to me is like, just make sure, like, defensively, he's always going to struggle in certain matchups because of his size. I think he did a pretty good job, all things considered, in the playoffs when they were asking him to switch onto bigger guys and all that stuff. But the handle is the next big step to make. Because like, if you look at the history of guys that are in that mold of player of Tyrese, it's like, you work on your handle, which I know he will be this offseason. Like, if he can get to the point where he's manipulating guys off the dribble with his handle, he's breaking dudes down, he's getting the defense to rotate because he's blowing by guys with his handle, he's hitting step backs, he's doing whatever, like, it's just going to make him such an unbelievable player. And I think that like investing in your own guys is like the move. Like, look at every team, like look at the two teams in the finals.
Yeah,
they're all their guys.
I mean, yeah, and the Sixers, I think, in a lot of ways, try that, right? Yes. I think they would have tried with. I mean, they're doing it with Joel. They would have tried it with Ben Simmons if he didn't fucking crap himself and just I can't even believe it. Like, so like, yeah, but I agree, man. There's nothing more fun than watching a guy you draft, especially that, like, just falling to us. Oh man, I thought Miami was going to grab him. He's such a heat culture guy. And when they didn't draft him, I was fucking celebrating. And yeah, man, he's so
win the Celtics series with Tyrese Maxey. You heard it here first.
Yes. Dude, think about this. I forgot who tweeted it. And I don't know if it was you, but someone was like, Maxey doesn't even have a bag yet.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have a bag. Like he's so nice. And like, I don't know how he makes these layups, right? Like, sometimes you're like, dude, no way. And then it just goes in. He has that Kyrie touch that's like almost impossible. But he doesn't even have a bag. And when he gets one, holy shit, that dude's going to be so good. Like, his shooting was not a fluke. Like, early in the year, you're like, okay, maybe it's a fluke. He's like, no, this dude can just shoot. And he can shoot from deep.
He's insanely good at shooting.
Yeah. And like, he's going to be our second best player, I think, by next year. Wow. I think so. I think you're going to look at it because James Harden has to change his game, right? I don't think the old James Harden comes back. I do think there's some, like, I keep saying, like, look, if you are a stripper in the Philadelphia area, please convince James to go vegan. We need vegan Harden. All right. Like, if you're, diamond, cinnamon, whatever, if you're listening to Trill,
Harden, let's get it.
Yeah. Let's get vegan Harden. Let's get him to lose a little weight, stop eating helmets full of ice cream during the playoffs. One of my favorite photos of all time. Get him in shape. Like, the last two years he's had bad hammies. Like, let's get him in shape and let's see what he can be. But I mean, Joel said it. You're not getting Houston Harden anymore. He's got to change his game. So who's going to be that guy to step up? And I think it's easily Maxey. It's not Tobias, you know? And that dude is so nice. Like he can get to the rim at will. He can hit threes. And you're right. Defense, he's got to get better at, which is like a thing young players struggle with, right?
He's gonna be fine.
That is one thing too. Like a lot of like basketball and things like this is like learning your opponents, and you learn by playing against them. Like think about it, like how many times has he played against Devin Booker? Like 4 times, maybe at most. So like as he gets more and more reps, and he's like, oh, I know a Book likes to go right, you know, or like, okay, when they run the pick and roll, so now like as a defender, you start learning these things, these tendencies. So I think he'll just naturally get better at that. And yeah, man, like I think it's me. I say that because I believe in Maxey so much, and I also don't necessarily believe in Harden as much as he is. So yeah, I think he'll easily be our second best player. I mean, he was our second best player before we got Harden, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think him and Seth were jockeying for it, but probably by the time we got Harden, it was definitely like. And after we got Harden, that version of Maxey, the 2 weeks after Harden got here, and he was just shot out of a cannon. That was a fucking sight to see. Like he was clearly our third best player at that point. And my thing is like, I've always argued, I think that Harden will age a little bit gracefully, because I think that he will be able to adapt his game because he's a basketball genius. Like he's just like really smart. Like he processes the game so quickly that like he can make any pass. He can become hopefully all-star level Ricky Rubio, but in the playoffs, not completely shit the bed. That's the hope.
I feel that, and I agree with you. My only issue that I worry about is, does he realize he's not as athletic as he once was? That's the thing. I think mentally he can transition to like, hey man, I'm a passer now. I gotta get, I've never played with a center like this. I got to get him the ball. I've never played with a Maxey that can drive to the basket like this, outside of maybe you could say Chris Paul or whatever, but like
not that version of Chris Paul was like
not that exactly. Like, so he's never really had that guy either. That, I mean, I guess you would say
really like Russ. I was going to say Russ but Russ didn't have the shot that Maxey had. So
exactly. So, but does he realize that he's not really breaking people down like he used to, and he can't just drive? Because I think that was the most frustrating thing of watching Harden this year, was like sometimes where you're like, dude, you're just like, you look like me just driving to the basket and like hoping for a foul. Like something like, dude, that wasn't a move. That was like, you just like kind of fell forward and you're not getting the calls anymore, buddy. So that's where I think if he can kind of realize that, or maybe it was just a health issue. Maybe it was a little bit of both, like, hey, I'm not getting the calls like I used to, so I got to figure out my game and play it slightly differently. Then, yeah, I think he could be back to being, I mean, obviously not MVP Harden, but like,
give me last year.
Really good.
Give me last year's version of James Harden.
Exactly.
Before the hamstring injury. Like, he had dipped a little bit, but he was becoming that facilitator. He was becoming the guy that was the core piece of the offense, but he also had like a little bit of burst to him. He had the step back fell more regularly. He didn't have to completely rely on, his rim frequency went down, his finishing numbers went down, but he didn't completely crater in a way that would be concerning. But kind of just like wrapping up this point is the fact that like, I do think that the pieces that we put around them are going to be just as important as them, because if you do plan on giving Harden a ton of money this offseason, and if you have Embiid, we'll see what happens with Tobias. I'm not really too worried about that right now, but you can't build the top heavy roster that you built and then not optimize the pieces around them, because I'm fine with building a top-heavy roster and hoping that Joel Embiid and James Harden and Tyrese Maxey are good enough by the time the playoffs roll around. But you better hope that your 4 through 10 is reliable, or your 4 through 8 is reliable, because ultimately, like, the downfall of this team, even with all of the injuries, even with all of everything that happened, I could get mad at Doc, all that shit. the fact is we had 4.5 to 5, maybe 5.5 tops playable players in the playoffs.
When was the last time someone won the championship that top heavy without great 4 to 8 or 4 to 8 or
it
4
was
to 10?
The Bucks last year, and the Bucks shortened their rotation to 7 by the finals. And honestly, like, think about the Bucks.
Pretty good other players, right?
Pat Connaughton. I mean, like Pat Connaughton was the 7th man. PJ Tucker and Bobby Portis were like the 2 guys. Like, they had, you either started PJ because Dante DiVincenzo got hurt. So it was your 3 guys, Drew, Middleton, Giannis, and then Brooke, who, by the way, amazing top 4. Not taking anything away from that. Very, very good top 4. But then after that, it was like PJ Tucker, who like on some nights was great, and then some nights was just completely not. Like, he played 17 minutes in the last game last night of the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, he does that sometimes where he's just not really that playable because he can't hit shots, and that's all he can do offensively.
But he's better than any guy that we have.
For sure. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
But like, my point is that like these kind of PJ Tucker types were acquirable. And like, if your main focus was like, let's build a top heavy roster and have like an okay bench with Bobby Portis, who no one thought was good before last year, by the way. Everyone thought Bobby Portis sucked. And then PJ Tucker, who was like, looking kind of cooked in Houston. Like, once again, being creative, figuring out guys that you can have a Nicholas Batum like resurrection of their career, or figuring out guys who you can develop in-house so that you have a Pat Connaughton that you can throw in there as your 7th man, and he can hit some threes and play defense and do whatever you need to do. Because that is the one thing that has completely restricted the Sixers, which is like, just like the lack of creativity, both with young guys and old guys. Like, I know we tried to go after Batum, we tried to go after Tucker, but like, it didn't get the fucking deals done. So like, get the deals done, get your guys in here, give me some dogs, and at the same time, try to do kind of what Golden State does, which it's very easy to do it when you have the culture that Golden State does. And you have Steph Curry. Like, I mean, that helps. Like, Steph Curry is just significantly better than any player that's on the Sixers, and even Joel Embiid. And the thing is that like you can do both, is my point here. You can develop. Like, I was a skeptic of Golden State's plan until I saw it this year, where it was like, you can do the old with the new. Like, you can do both at the same time, and it doesn't have to completely like, I thought they were insane for not cashing in some of their picks and going all in and whatever. Like, no, like, you can get guys to develop. You can find veterans on cheap deals. Like, you can do this as long as you're smart and creative.
Yeah. And it's a shame that I think like a lot of the younger guys, well, it's a tough call, right? Because like you would look at our young guys that they tried, right? And you got what we're talking, like Shake, talking Furk.
But even if you just go recently, yes. Okay,
I'm saying Thibault, Paul Reed. So it's like we're kind of there, but none of them really popped off. Oh, well, Maxi's popped off. We gotta give credit. But like, it's like Shea kind of fell off this year. Furkan, like, what happened to him? And Reed's still like, I think, a little young. He's got to get better, and maybe Bassey something. So maybe we're close to on to something. I don't know.
There's no reason that Paul Reed can't get to like a Looney level of good.
Yeah,
like
he can be a backup. He should be a backup.
Exactly, like a fringe starter backup type, where like you can just play. Like, he can figure it. They're very different players, but just within the same concept of like having an impact as like your 5th starter or your first guy off the bench, or your second guy off the bench, whatever it is. Like, I think that the young guys that I would keep for sure, obviously Maxi's not even, you don't even have to think about it. We already said he's untouchable, but the young guys I would definitely keep are like, I would keep Springer. I would keep Reed. And then I would definitely keep Bassey, because he's just like only still in his rookie contract and was just drafted and showed flashes. And I think I would keep Isaiah Joe, just because like,
Isaiah Joe. Yeah.
Because like the shooting element with him, if he can ever get onto the court for an extended period of time and the shooting is real and I think it is, because he was an insane shooter in college and he's shown games where he has these insane shooting nights. Like, I just think that like, unless you're getting real value back for these guys in a trade this offseason, which is the big thing with everyone's freaking out about Springer. And then I'm like, all right, do me a favor and go look at like how many guys do we do this with, especially guys that are 19 years old, like where we're like, oh, they're not good. Oh, they suck. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, I don't know, like Grant Williams, everyone thought he sucked 2 years ago, and like he's pretty good. He's like in the rotation for the Celtics right now. And like there are guys Jordan Poole was like literally the worst player in the NBA 2 years ago. And now he's like legitimately really fucking good. Yeah. I'm not saying that this is like the standard. This is what happens every single time. But like you don't just give up on guys after 1 or 2 years. Like if they suck after 3 years and they're, especially the guys that are a little bit older and like they haven't developed and whatever, like that's to the point where I think you're like, all right, we can maybe move this guy for a more impact player that like even might just be a fringe rotation guy, but like we're just like he's doing nothing for us. But like I'm very much against giving up on guys after 1 or 2 years unless you're getting legitimate value back for them in a trade.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I forgot about Isaiah Joe. He was a nice pickup too. Like I think we have some young guys that just like, I don't know. We just need them to like really develop and get better.
We just need them to be 7th and 8th men. That's the thing is like, exactly. It's not even like we're like Knicks fans who are like Emmanuel Quickly is God. Like we're literally like, because he's the first guard that they've seen dribble a basketball and shoot in forever. Like we're literally just like, hey, like you can just play like 15 minutes a night, right? Like our bar's pretty low.
Yeah. And that's what always kills me about like losing these late first round picks. You know what I mean? Because like and when you hit on one of them, they're just so valuable. And there's always
they got another opportunity coming up soon. They'll get. I think they're gonna nail the pick again this year. They have every year of the Morey era, so I'm not too.
So my worry is Morey loves to get rid of these picks.
Well, yeah, I mean the 23rd pick. You got to see how the board shakes out. That's what he does every year. Because like when Maxey fell to us, he was like, "There's no way we're trading this pick."
Yeah.
When Springer fell to us, he was like. Apparently a little bit on the fence, was like, we like Springer as a prospect, but like we're not opposed to trading this pick away if we got an offer that we really like. We saw how the board shook out, whatever. Then now we're at the point where it's like kind of a weaker draft. We'll see if they'll probably get the 23rd pick. And like if we're there on draft night and they get to 23 and they don't like any of the prospects that are on the board, I'm fine with trading the pick. Like I'm fine with trading the pick to get like, even if it's an 8th man that's like on like a decent contract, like a Torrey Craig level guy or someone that's maybe even a little bit better than him. But like, that's kind of just my general point.
Yeah. I just mean like down the future, we're running like, you know what I mean? We had to get rid of one for Seth, right? Like things like that.
We didn't trade one for Seth.
No, not for Seth.
We have no fucking picks though. I mean, like
that's what I mean.
Every other year we don't have a first basically. So.
Yeah. And that's where it gets a little scary because then you're not like when you miss on guys like Furk, or like, you start like, okay, now, or like a Thibault, like you're saying like, okay, maybe it's time to move on from them. You need to be replenishing them, and then it's like your team changes so much when you get a Desmond Bane, like a Tyrese Maxey, like you literally like Desmond Bane is a guy that like what? Like that changed the fortune of a franchise. Like no one was like this Memphis team is, going to be this good.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh no,
their second or third best player. And
like, how many times have we seen these guys that are in their, late draft picks in their 20s where you're like, oh no, like that changed everything, So I would say that's the one thing I worry about, but that's also kind of the nature of, the win now thing.
Yep.
But, you were right. Like Golden State did an outstanding job of that.
Yeah, they proved me wrong.
They had the number 2 pick and they wasted it on James Wiseman.
Blew it. Yeah, they blew the number 2. The Suns and the Warriors somehow blew. They both blew lottery picks in the same draft, and they're totally fine because of it. It seems like. I mean, it might come back to bite the Suns now because of whatever's happening there, but like the Warriors are totally fine, and they also could have had LaMelo Ball, which breaks my brain. But all right. Let's get to quick finals prediction. Who do you think is going to win, Warriors or Celtics?
Oh, Warriors. Easy. I picked Warriors at the beginning of the year. Last night I said 5.
Okay.
I'll stick with it. I just look, Warriors, like it's Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green still. And they've added all these other players and they get Gary Payton Jr. or Gary Is it junior or second? Second, yeah. Back.
GP2.
Like they've been there before. And again, Celtics, I get it. Nate Silver wrote some kind of math formula that said they were good a little while ago. And now all the Twitter nerds have to be like, I told you. It's like, yeah, great. Like, okay, play without Chris Middleton, play with a hobbled Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, and then take them to game 7, where you were an inch away from Jimmy Butler on one knee beating you.
Yeah, Marcus Smart owes Jimmy Butler his life, because if Jimmy Butler misses that shot, Marcus Smart goes down or makes that shot, and the Celtics lose that game, Marcus Smart goes down as as a villain in Boston. He's been a hero there for so long, and he was a disaster down the stretch of that game, just chucking and missing everything. I was like, oh my God, if they blow this game, like it would be a level that I saw it with Ben Simmons last year, but it would be like just short of that, because like Marcus Smart is just like a dog and like people respect him more.
And Warriors just like destroyed the Mavs. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted, because like on one hand, yes, they did destroy the Mavs. On the second half, or the second point of that is like no one really saw the Mavs get into the Western Conference Finals. Like I picked that series to go 7. Don't get me wrong. Like I was like, the way that Luka's playing right now, like it should go 7. Like I do think that like the Warriors haven't really played anyone. Like I think the Celtics have had an easy road considering injuries, but they also still had to beat a team with Kevin Durant. They still had to beat a team with Giannis, and you know, the Heat, I don't really take them all that seriously, but like, I don't think that they've had any sort of like cupcake road. I think that they've had like a decently hard road, and the Warriors are going to be their biggest test by far, for sure, because they're healthy. They have the top end talent. They have the core. They have a lot of advantages in this series that I feel like, even defensively, like I think Boston's defense is a little bit better built for the playoffs with their switching, but I still think that like the Warriors defense is extremely good. The one question that I really have with the series is like, do the Warriors struggle? Because the one team that the Warriors kind of struggled with in the playoffs, even though they were much, much better, was the Grizzlies. And that's because the Grizzlies they had a lot of size, they had athleticism, they were able to get out running, they were able to do things that the Warriors were, you know, able to stop the other teams from doing, essentially. So I'm going to be interested to see how the Warriors are in terms of rebounding in this series. If Robert Williams is healthy, then that could be a big factor. If he's not healthy, I don't like Boston's chances a lot. Like I think that the two swing pieces for this series for me are Robert Williams' health and like whether he can be effective and good, because he just changes what they can do on offense and defense when he's healthy. And then Jordan Poole's defense, because if Jordan Poole is out there and the Warriors offense is completely unstoppable and he can hang defensively and he's not getting completely targeted on switches by Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum every possession, then I really like the Warriors' chances. And I really think that like those are the two things that could swing this series from like what you said, like Warriors in 5, to like, if one of those two things breaks in the Celtics direction, I could see this series going 7. I was tempted. Like, I just think this is a really good matchup for the Celtics. Like, I think the Warriors are the better team, but I think that like the one thing that the Warriors have shown that they struggle with are these big wing guys. And like the Celtics have multiple of them. And like, look, they shit the bed down the stretch of some of these games. And I think the Warriors, the fact that they've been there before is what's going to be the difference between these two teams, is that like the Celtics, even though they've been in the conference finals and they've done all that, like this is the first time getting to that next level, getting to the finals. And I do think that just like having that experience and being like looking around and being like, oh, we've been here before. Like we can do this. Like we have Steph, even if it's not as good version of all three of the guys, they'll always have something to fall back on, essentially. So I think I'm going to pick Warriors in 7, to be honest. Like, I think the Celtics are going to push them. I think I would be pretty surprised if the Celtics won, but I'm not going to be surprised if it comes down to like a hard 7-game series or a hard 6-game series. And like the Celtics are like really pushing them. I just think that like the way that they played since January is just fucking crazy to me. Like, I've never seen a turnaround like this before. And I think I trust the Warriors more, which is why I'll lean Warriors, but I'll say I think it's going to be a lot closer than people are making it out to be.
I look, I've been not believing in the Celtics all year, and I've been wrong every time. So I could see the Celtics winning. I could see it going to 7. But as a Celtics hater and as a guy who picked the Warriors to win the whole thing from day one, that was my preseason prediction. It's Warriors in 5, and it's a gentleman's sweep. I would say that. I think.
I hope you're right.
Man. I don't know. I just feel like I'm probably wrong. It's probably a 6 or 7 to be. If I'm being real, because Celtics have this thing that some games they do this third quarter thing where like the game's close and they blow you out in the third, and it's just too hard to come back. And I could see that, but man, I don't know, man. Like Memphis was good, like Mavs were pretty good, and they put a beating on them. Well, I mean, Ja did get hurt. But
let's think about the last 5 finals, and let's think about the circumstances of those teams winning. Giannis and the Bucks, they had the best player, Giannis. Mm-hmm. They win the series in 6. They come back, they win 4 in a row. Year before that, you have the Lakers, LeBron, clearly the best player in that series, even though Jimmy Butler played his ass off.
Oh, wait, I think you mispronounced Caruso. Is that what? Yeah, Caruso. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bubble KCP was on his
Bubble KCP. Yeah.
The year before that, Kawhi, Steph, like that's a little bit like the way that Kawhi was playing in that playoffs. And the fact that the Warriors didn't have Kevin Durant and they lost Klay Thompson in the last game and all
they got hurt.
Like, there's a lot of context to that.
Yeah.
But if you go back the large majority of like finals, the team that has the best player, except for maybe those LeBron years when he was going up against the Warriors, like the large majority of the time, the team that has the best player wins the finals. And Steph Curry's impact can't be measured in points. It can't be measured in assists and rebounds and percentages and all that shit. Steph Curry's impact is that he is on the court and everyone is terrified that he's going to get the ball and hit a 3 at any given time. Like
any moment.
This is going to be the greatest challenge.
He's Omar from The Wire. Yeah. It's just like, whoa, he's on the block somewhere.
Yeah.
We heard the whistle. He's here. Everyone's just fucking be careful.
Around like
just like, all right, let's just leave because he's that guy.
We're going to see, because this is going to be the biggest test for the Celtics defense so far. This is way, way, way better offensively than any of the teams that they faced so far. So we'll see. I'm going to be interested to see how Derek White plays against Steph Curry, because he's been awesome chasing guys around screens, but Steph is a different level of shooter. So we're going to see how much the Celtics are very much the nerd favorite for sure, because the Celtics they have a bunch of these like smart players who are like, they have the Al Horfords, they have the Derek Whites, they have the Grant Williams, like they have a bunch of like former draft Twitter favorites and like guys who are just like, they play winning basketball. Marcus Smart, like they have a bunch of guys. And I actually think the Celtics seems pretty likable. I don't like Horford, but I like a lot of their guys. And it pains me to say that, because I was rooting against them heavily in the Eastern Conference Finals, because I wanted the Heat to win and then get crushed in the finals. But I do think that like the nerd thing, it will be interesting, because the Warriors were like one of the original nerd teams. So it's like the old school 10 years ago nerd team versus like the new school, now the new nerd team. So we're going to see.
It's like old. It's like PER versus Raptor, right? Yeah. It's like if you grew up on PER and box plus minus, like you're a Warriors guy. But if you're like Raptor or LeBron or something like that, like you are now you're all, you're Boston.
I'm a real purr head, dude. Yeah,
this is great.
I don't fuck with any of those new analytics.
Yeah, and the only loser is the women that both sides can't please.
All right, let's get into our final thing here, which is our slop roundup.
Oh, I love the slop. Slop them up. That's your best bit, man.
It's made me. I'm a made man off the slop. That has been my.
I just been every time it's like I need slop. It's like, wow, love it. It's great. It's great. As a brand, it is an outstanding brand. Slop
yeah,
brand.
I mean, it fits me. Look at me. Come on.
It's great.
All right.
It is so good.
So, okay, we have the big Slop news that came out last week, which is Kevin Durant has not spoken to the Nets front office this season, and the Nets are unwilling to extend Kyrie long term. So I just want to say, I heard about 3 weeks ago, I had heard from someone who I trusted, and I told a few other people about this because I was like, I'm pretty sure that this is true. I did not hear this. What I had heard was Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving have not talked, and that Kevin Durant went over to Europe basically to get away from all of the drama that happened this year with the Nets, and he kind of wanted to, do his eat, pray, love thing for a little bit over in Europe and go watch his boy Mike James play basketball, and that the Nets were going to be open to trading Kyrie this offseason. I did not expect the fact that he would be not in touch with the front office at all, and now the Nets are unwilling to extend. Like, just think about where the Nets have come from, like where they've gone in a calendar year. Like,
look, one of the Super Hoopers' best takes, and is proved to be true because we're never wrong. # never wrong. Is that Sean Marks is a fraud. Sean Marks is a fraud.
Okay, let's hear it.
And he is a writers that live in gentrified Brooklyn hipster world, like media sensation. Like forever, they were like, Sean Marks, he built such a great team. Oh my God, look at all these players he's got. Like all, it was a couple years ago before Kevin Durant. Oh, like, bro, they were barely
and Joe Harris.
They were barely 500. You don't give a GM credit for a team that's 500. I'm sorry. Like I'm very sorry. This is not what we do. You had 0 stars, and you were a 500 team, and everyone's like, oh my God, Sean Marks is a genius. It's like, yeah, because you all fucking ride your no gear bikes to the same coffee shop, and you get on the internet and you write these stories that because Sean Marks are friendly. And then he does this magic, right? And he's like, oh, I traded all these parts for KD and then Kyrie and then James Harden. And he's a genius. He's a genius. No, that's not. You've done nothing. You've done nothing. You were a fucking 7th seed this year, right? Like, what are you doing? You went out and signed Ben Simmons. You are a fraud. Get out of here, Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets. Like, get out of here. You're garbage. I don't want to hear it.
I mean, you guys might end up being right in the end, because
now we have the guy who doesn't believe the Earth is round is causing problems.
I'm shocked.
Wow.
The guy that blew up the last 2 teams that he was on. I mean, we say this, but ironically, we have James Harden on our team right now. We are aware of that, though, right? Like, we're aware that this could end at any moment.
I'm very aware with that. Yes.
I do care a little bit more because, like, this whole Kyrie thing and the Harden stuff has taught me, like, you have to have guys that get along. Like, I mean, that's just like the bottom line is that stars run the NBA now, and if they're not happy, goodbye. And
it used to be the other way. You used to be able to have a Shaq and Kobe,
right?
And you could hit each other and do that. But now it's too easy.
Yeah,
the players have the power, which I'm not saying is wrong. I want players to have more power.
Yeah,
right. Like, I'm not rooting for the billionaires. I'll root for the millionaires, not the billionaires.
Yeah, I'm an ethical person.
Yeah, I mean, like, come on, I'm a man of the people, right? That's my favorite thing too. Is like when people like go like they just like ride these athletes, and they're like, oh my God, like and they just like defend them down. Like, stop defending the 1% here. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't like. What are we doing?
The funny thing is that, like, as I believe it was Ethan Sherwood Strauss wrote an article about how, like, and I have my issues with him that are other things, but like this article was really good. Like, he did a really great job of like breaking down the fact that, like, a lot of these guys like LeBron and Durant and all that, like, they are management. Like, they're the ones making the moves. Like, it's not really player empowerment, it's manager empowerment. It's making the players into management, which is in itself a conflict. Like, it's not like they're like, I'm just one of the guys. Like, they're like, no, I'm making the moves. I'm making sure that this guy gets traded or this guy gets cut and whatever. Like that's not really play. That's player empowerment for like 10 guys in the NBA.
I mean, it's like LeBron has an agency.
Yeah.
Like that line is so blurred, right? It's like Clutch is LeBron. LeBron is Clutch. Like, what do we like? We get it, you know? So
I do just have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think Kyrie is back with the Nets next year?
I do. Because I don't think there's many other options.
Same here.
Who is like really going after it? And look, I think
the Lakers. That's it.
I don't know if LeBron does. I don't think him.
I think LeBron. Okay, I think LeBron would do it.
I don't think he goes.
I think he would say, if we can get off the Russ contract, and you can give me 1 year of Kyrie, AD, LeBron in the West, I think he would just be like, "Fuck it." Like, I mean, I don't. What's the alternative? You have a season with Russell Westbrook and you're bad, and maybe you get along a little bit better. Like, I don't know.
LeBron's pretty petty. I don't think him and Kyrie would ever. Well, a couple things. I don't think Kyrie would play for him. Okay, you got both petty sides. So Kyrie isn't coming in welcoming arms.
Yeah.
There is a world where Kyrie's like, yeah, man, let's squash this. I got to get out of the East. I'll join you. Let's do this. My bad. You know, you're my big bro. We'll take care of this. I don't see that happening. So then now it has to be all LeBron and has to swallow Kyrie's like crap.
Yeah.
And then I still think LeBron has the ego that he thinks him and AD are good enough.
I agree with that. But I also think that he knows that this Russ thing is going to hold them back. It's like, we saw how bad it was in the regular season. It's going to be 10 times worse in the playoffs if they can't get rid of Russ.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
And
like, if you see an out where it's like, oh shit, like we can actually bring in like another guy who's like legitimately like, even with Kyrie, with all of his problems and even with all of his struggles that he's had in the playoffs, and that big three would make a lot more sense to me than the current big three that they have. And I think that if Kyrie was open to it, that LeBron would be. But I think that unless like the Knicks come calling, which I don't expect, because it's like, I just think he wants to live in New York. Like, it sounds like he just doesn't really want to leave. And like the only other team there is the Knicks. And like, that's kind of your only option. You burned other bridges everywhere else. Like him and Harden are in similar situations where like, this might be the last team that they play for just out of like circumstance and necessity. Like it's not like necessarily their call.
I agree. And I think there's like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just like Kevin Durant, like millennial, passive aggressive, avoiding conflict. And he's like, I'm just going to go to Europe and not call anyone. And that will also be the answer to the problem, where he just like shows back up and Kyrie's there and he's like, oh, hey, bud. Like,
he's like, I'm not going to group therapy. Like, I'm just going to avoid all my problems and they'll go
away.
I'm Kevin Durant. Yeah.
That's why I think Kyrie will be there. Not because they don't try. I think it's not because they don't want him. I think they just like passive aggressively just like don't try. And then they're just like, oh, I guess nothing changed because I tried nothing.
I guess if Kyrie does come back, the question is, can they unfuck the vibes? Because now you have Kevin Durant, which, like, look, Durant is amazing, but, you know, we saw in the playoffs that, like, there are teams that can kind of slow him down in a way that we have not seen in quite some time, since before he was in Golden State. And then you have Kyrie, who you never know what you're going to get with. You don't even know if he's going to fucking show up to work.
No.
Then you have Ben Simmons, who, same exact thing. You have no idea what the fuck's going on with him.
I forgot he was on the team. I literally, when you were like, Ben, I was like, wait, what? Oh, shit, that's right.
He's a Brooklyn Net, right?
Yeah, I forgot he's on the Nets.
He didn't retire and go on a vision quest. Yeah, no, he is. It will be interesting. I think that they'll probably try to keep him. I think that the messaging that Sean Marks has sent this offseason is basically, hey, we need guys who want to be here.
Yeah.
And Kyrie and Ben are about the flakiest you can get when it comes to that sort of commitment. So I'm very interested to see what happens. I think ultimately what probably does happen is they attempt to run it back. They bring Kyrie back on maybe like a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year team option. He apparently from what I heard, he wanted a no trade clause in his contract, and the Nets said absolutely no fucking way. We're not doing that because we can't risk getting stuck with you if you just decide to fucking quit on the team, basically. Amazing. So I do think that they're going to try to run it back. I think they'll probably just try to make moves. Like maybe they'll use the Sixers picks that they have. Maybe they'll use some salary that they have to get in like guys that fit better around those guys and see how it looks. Because like, look, as crazy as everything is there's still a ton of talent. And like, we could easily be here next season and just sitting here talking about like, oh, the Nets are the 1 seed. Like it could happen. Like
I thought they were going to win. I thought it'd be them and the Warriors this year. Yeah. They have the talent, but you know, they didn't have the vaccine, and here we are. Here we are.
Amazing. It's the butterfly effect thing, dude. Fucking, it's the same thing we were talking about earlier. You're like, look, we're sitting here worried about Joel Embiid's tweets, and a year from now, the Heat could be fucking underwater, and then fucking the Sixers could be doing great. Like we don't every year things change. Boston in December was fucked. Boston for a year was fucked. And now they're totally fine. They're in the finals. Like shit can change at any second. So it will be really interesting to see what happens. I'm going to guess that Kyrie is definitely on the team next year. And I think it's more out of the fact that no one's going to want to take the chance on him on a long-term contract. If there's a team out there that could take him on a 1 or 2 year deal, they do it because they're like the talent upside is crazy. Like Dallas would do that. Like there are teams that would just like fucking roll the dice and say, let's see if we can figure it out. But I just don't really see a
Pelicans reunion with Dave Griff.
How about Miami?
Ooh,
Kyrie would probably like to live in Miami. Jimmy would be like, I finally have a teammate who can create his own shot. Like, I can't imagine. I think they are friends. I'm pretty sure Kyrie and Jimmy are friends.
They have Lowry, though. Pelicans don't really have a point guard, right? Who's their point guard?
Well, they have CJ McCollum. I mean, he's shooting guard, but he can play point guard. Like, I mean, he was their point guard for a good chunk. But plus, you have Ingram. Like, I don't really think they worry too much about and Zion if he ever comes back. Like they have plenty of on ball guys. I don't really think they need to worry as much about
Dave Griff, though. He knows his job's almost gone.
I don't know. I think their
crazy
turnaround was.
They did have a good turnaround. That CJ thing.
Yeah. So I think that probably saved this job. So all right. Last two things. Let's get into. Actually, speaking of the Mavs, so there's one trade that the Mavs are not interested in, which was surprising to me, which is they're not going to be in contention for Rudy Gobert. They're not interested. Apparently, Mark Stein came out and said that he's very plugged in there. They don't want to focus on getting him, even though Tim McMahon reported earlier that they would be very interested. So they're not interested in him, but they are interested in Zach LaVine, who
is very
now
good.
they're Vegas is putting out numbers on like which team you can bet on that he would go to if he leaves the Bulls. Yeah, like it's like the Spurs, the Knicks, the Mavs. Like
restricted or unrestricted?
He's unrestricted.
Unrestricted.
He wants the money, and like I think Chicago's going to pay him it, but like I don't know. We'll see. I'm very interested because I talked about LaVine last week. Like I don't really see the fit on some teams, but the Mavs make sense to me because like just a secondary creator like Zach LaVine, an all-star level second guy, would make a ton of sense there. And if you're Chicago, like maybe you could get Jalen Brunson and picks back or so, like whatever it is. It's a sign and trade. You don't have a ton of leverage. You get whatever you can get, and then you kind of go on from there. So I think that like I was surprised that they weren't interested in Gobert, and I was not as surprised that like they're gonna try to go after LaVine, because the Mavs do this like every 2 or 3 years where they're like, we're clearing cap space. We're gonna get Dwight Howard. We're gonna get we're gonna go after X free agent, whatever. And now they're just like, look, if we can work out a sign and trade, we'll work out a sign and trade and figure that out. And I don't know. I like the Zach LaVine fit a lot there. I like the Rudy Gobert fit even more, to be honest. I'm not a big Rudy guy, but I think that like if you just have him on the back line with Luke, like to back up Luka, and then you also have him as like a rolling threat, like he makes a ton of money. That's the problem. And I think that they're scarred by the Porzingis thing. Like, cause he was on he got a max and like all that shit. But ultimately, I don't know if I'm the Mavs, I might just try to roll with the formula that I have. And Rudy is like kind of like the peak of that. He can't switch. That's the major problem.
That's the big problem.
Yeah, in the playoffs.
That's like the whole thing.
Yeah,
that's like the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the hugest Rudy. Like, it's the same thing. Like, I think he's really good at times.
Sure.
I think there's times where he's unplayable, and the problem is when you're playing a max guy that money. That's it. It's not him. It's the contract.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where, like, can you get 85-90% of him at like way less money? You know, like
could you go get Clint Capella?
That's I was just gonna say the old Clint Capella, like, you know, where you know, like those feel like more like how much better is he than like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm like, I'm not the hugest Rudy Gobert fan. Like, if you're gonna put money into a player, like I need that guy to get me buckets.
Yeah, I feel you.
Like that's how I would look at it. Unless you're like, you know, a Kawhi level defender, but even then you're getting buckets.
Yeah,
you know, like, so I don't know. That's a tricky one for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree that, like, I'm not investing a ton of money in the center position unless my center is my best player, Jokic and Embiid level. Like, I'm not going to invest a ton of money. I like the fit. Like, I like the pick and roll game that those two could open up with shooters around them. And I like the fact that, like, I think that Gobert might even be a little bit underrated because of how bad Utah's perimeter defense is. But at the same time, like, Luka's never going to be like a stout defender on the perimeter, and he'll get targeted and all that stuff. So, like, it's not the cleanest fit in the world. I'd be interested to see, like, I'm starting to think Zach LaVine's really leaving this offseason, though, which is fucking crazy to me. That's dude. Crazy. Like, it's crazy after they, like, basically just, like, went all out to try to bring this guy back. And now they're like, well, you know, we traded for Vooch, like DeMar, they sign Lonzo, they bring in Caruso, like, they're trying everything, and he might just be like, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, no, I agree. Brutal. Yeah, I love Zach LaVine. I love all my UCLA guys. I have irrational fandom of UCLA guards and Kentucky guards, so I root for them. But one quick thing about Rudy Gobert, where, like, you mentioned, like, oh, well, their perimeter, guys aren't good defenders, and it's like, okay, well, remind me whose Sixers perimeter guys were really good at defense,
right? I mean, and
Joel still leads you to a good defense. So, like, Gobert, like, that's kind of your job, you know, like,
clean up the messes.
You got to kind of clean up the mess, or stop it.
That's why we pay you a ton of money. Like, that's the ultimate problem, is that, like, if you invest that much money, then all you need to do is put guys around Rudy Gobert who you need to have a high level creator like Donovan Mitchell, and then a secondary creator like Conley, and shooters and stuff. But then they all are not good on defense because you're building around your defensive guy. Like that's
don't build around your defensive guy.
Yes, exactly. That cannot get you buckets. He is not a bucket. He is not a problem. He's only a problem for your cap sheet. So, all right, last thing. The Cleveland Cavaliers are interested in the following players.
Okay.
This list of wings was amazing. I guess they just went on, like, Basketball Reference, and they just, like, looked at, like, how much money people make, and they're just like
sorted. They like free agent.
Yeah. No, they're not even free agents. They're on other teams. I don't even know if they want to trade these guys. Bogdan Bogdanović, Bojan Bogdanović. They want both. Gordon Hayward, Tobias Harris.
Ooh.
Second straight offseason that Tobias Harris has been connected to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but problem is they don't really have anyone we want. Gordon Hayward, I already said. Harrison Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., Jeremy Grant, Aaron Gordon, Andrew, who didn't he just get traded like a year ago? Like, Andrew Wiggins, who I don't think the Warriors are jumping over anything to get rid of Andrew Wiggins now, and Mike Conley, which I don't really get Mike Conley there. But my point here is that there might be a team that will take Tobias Harris.
That's
what I'm trying.
That's the slop. Goal is that is the best definition of slop. That there was a Hoops Hype article that said Cavs, and there was a list of 30 free agents, and one of them was Tobias Harris. You're like, I
right.
need this, man. I need this.
Please.
We're a week away from June, man. I need something, man.
Give me the Slop.
John, I need this, man. Yeah.
I guess the Cleveland Cavaliers, their goal is just to build the largest team. Darius Garland plus a bunch of massive dudes. Basically the Elton Brand plan, but with one guard instead. So you'd have Mobley at the 4, who's 7 foot and like basically a center. You'd have Jared Allen at center. You'd have Tobias Harris at small forward. Back to small forward for Tobias. Then you would have Isaac Okoro, who's like a small forward that would be your starting shooting guard, or Karis LeVert or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe if you could, I'll be in the trade machine trying to figure out the next time that I come around. I'm going to figure out a Tobias Harris trade that we can get Tobias off the Sixers cap sheet. We can get Kevin Love maybe to another team, a third team, because he makes around the same amount of money, and then we can get back whoever. And I can just kind of conceptualize this. There are a lot of mid-tier contract guys. I don't think it's that realistic, but there is at least one team who a writer for Cleveland.com says they are interested for the second straight offseason. So let's go. I'm running with
the Slop. I love the Slop.
We love it.
Man, wouldn't that be great to get rid of Harris and just pick up like basically the Kristaps thing, right? Like if you could get 2 or 3 guys with that money, it just fills what we need. You know what I mean? Like, man, yeah. If you could get like, because it's like, yeah, you look at someone like Harrison Barnes, who's like around a Tobias Harris. I'd probably take Tobias maybe slightly ahead of him, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
He's making what, like 22 next year?
He's making $18 million. He's on a descending contract.
Oh yeah, he's on the descending, right?
Yeah.
So you get $22 million to play with, and you get basically the same guy, except Barnes has a championship, and like it's probably, it might be better than Tobias.
I'll say this much. When I talk about flexibility and I talk about versatility, Harrison Barnes gives you a lot more of that than Tobias Harris does. Like Tobias is pretty strictly a 4. Like you can kind of cheat and play him at the 3 sometimes out of necessity. In the craziest world, you could play him at the 5 in theory, but it would probably be bad.
But yeah.
I think that Harrison Barnes can play the 3 and the 4, and that he just makes, because of his his willingness to shoot, his shooting, and the fact that he can defend multiple positions, which Tobias has figured out this year. I will say, like, he did a great job of that this year. But I think the fact that he has like a proven history of that, and he's been on like legit winning teams like the Warriors and whatever, like, I do think that kind of guy might just like fit better on a contending team than, unless we get Tobias Harrison Barnes for a full season. And even then he's making too much money.
And we see that all the time, right? Like some people just can't be the main guy, you know, like look at Andrew Wiggins when he's
Harrison Barnes couldn't be the main guy in Dallas.
Yeah. You know, and he can't do it in Sacramento. But if you're like, hey man, all you got to do is guard someone and hit open threes and make sure Joel gets the ball and make sure Maxey and Harden get the ball. That becomes a pretty good. I mean, we saw that with Tobias this year, right?
Yeah.
Tobias was like, hey, you're not shooting anymore. Just play defense. And he had a great playoffs. Like,
and even if he made Andrew Wiggins max money, $30 million a year, you'd be like, all right, look, he's $10 million overpaid, but we can figure it out.
But you can get a Seth Curry with that extra money, you know, like your Danny Green kind of play, you know, that guy that's like, okay, this guy we can play for 12 minutes in the playoffs. No, absolutely not, Tobias. That Elton Brand contract was like, he's still trying to find more ways to pay him more money somehow. Like he's trying to make that contract even bigger. I don't know how it's possible. Back
alleys, you know, like trying to get him on more Goldfish commercials and such. All right. We've been going plenty long. I'm going off the Slop. John, tell us a little bit about your film that you are currently working on, that you are doing your Kickstarter for, and tell people why they should donate and support.
Oh man, first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me on the pod, man. I rarely get to be a guest on other people's pod. It's probably because of my terrible takes. But thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I almost cut you because of the Thibault take, but it's fine.
Yeah, right. It's a good one. But thanks for having me, man. It's awesome. And I'm a big fan, so just keep it up. Like I think you're filling the void of that's been lacking in Sixers pods. You make it really fun and it's great. And it's
thanks, bud.
You know, so much of basketball can be like a grind and a pain in the ass. And sometimes you're just like, when sports is your escape and your escape is driving you nuts because fucking the coach that you don't want is playing a washed DeAndre Jordan over like, you know, some other guys. Like, I'm glad that you're there to make people laugh and enjoy it and have fun and bring a community together. So I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, that's the point, dude. So
yeah,
I'd be going insane if I didn't have
right.
it. So.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little backstory. So yeah, I've been, you know, a filmmaker my whole life. Like I went to college at Pitt, graduated, moved to LA and just been making films. And then, things were going well for me. You know, I was like building my career. I just shot like this thing for Nintendo and everything was going well. And then, you know, I got the phone call that my dad was sick and then I flew home and, you know, unfortunately he passed away. And I was like 25 at the time. This was 13 years ago. And it was really rough. It was a really terrible time in my life. Luckily, my friends and family helped me out, pulled me through it. And one day I'm in LA, I'm coming back, and I go to this coffee shop. This is a true story. I go to this coffee shop, and there's this cute girl there. And I'm like, all right, like, I'm going to talk to this cute girl. And I go and talk to this cute girl, and we really hit it off. And we spent the whole day together. It was like this magical day. Her cat was sick and we just like kind of bonded. You know, I told her about my dad and we just like spent the day walking through LA and just had like one of these magical days. And I remember saying like one day, parts of this day is going to be a movie, right? It just had that special feeling. And a couple of weeks later, Twitter and Nikon had this film festival called Your Day in 140 Seconds. And I was like, holy shit, I just had the most incredible day. So I got the girl, we recreated the day and we shot it and we became a finalist. We're like one of 50 out of thousands of submissions all across the world. We were one of 50. Top prize was $100,000. Rainn Wilson, you know, Dwight from The Office was a judge. He watched the short and tweeted about it. And this was like 13 years ago. When Dwight was like the Twitter dude and he's like, yo, dude, like your film has humanity in it. You're like 20, you're like, oh my God, this is it.
Holy
like,
shit.
This is the other side of the coin to my dad passing, right? Like, of course, like you go through, you know, you hit your valley and then you go through your peak, right? Unfortunately, we didn't win. Whatever, it happens. But I always knew forever that this was the story I wanted to tell. And for years, literally 10 years, I was trying to tell this story and I couldn't quite figure it out. And I would find myself trapped, like literally trapped in this prison of like, you know, I eventually, the girl in the film was not my wife. But I eventually met my wife, you know, 8 years ago. And then, you know, and things would happen. Like she'd be like, hey, let's go on vacation. Right. And I'd be like, I really should be working on my film. And then I wouldn't work on my film or I'd get nowhere. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm like upset. Like I didn't go on vacation and I didn't work on my film. And you just constantly get in this trap of like, I'm a failure, you know?
Oh, believe me. I know.
Right.
That very well.
Right.
Yeah.
You know how it is. Yeah. Right.
Oh, 100% can relate to that.
Yeah. And so like one day I just had to have a face-to-face, a heart-to-heart with myself. And I was like, dude, just quit, man. You're not a feature film director. Like, I know that was your goal your whole life. Like you made the leap. You went to college for film. You did the whole thing and you know, but you just got to quit. And when you're hungry, you'll be hungry again. And it really helped. It got me to relax more. I just had that monkey off my back. At Fox Sports, like I work on the digital team, things started really picking up for me. I really started focusing and enjoying sports. Like for the first couple of years, I've been there for 7 years now. First couple of years, I was like, this is just my day job. I'm really a feature film director. I'm going to leave whenever, you know. And then I was like, no, man, like you got a pretty badass job. Like you cover the NBA, you go to the Super Bowl.
You work with Skip Bayless and Colin Cowherd.
I worked with Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd, Shannon. I did the best was I used to do Chris Broussard's podcast, and man, that was like dude, one All-Star game. Like I like hung out with Hinkie all night and Joel. We went to Michael Jordan's 50th birthday party. I ate his cake. Like it was like I really enjoyed this job. And then you know, when you're hungry, you'll be hungry again. And then so 3 years ago, but 2.5 years ago, I'm shooting a buddy short film, right? And I shot half of it, and then another friend shot the other half. And you know, he's like, "Oh, who's shooting the other half?" And he goes, "Oh, John Hill is." And my guy, he's my friend, and I know he didn't mean it in a bad way, but he goes, "Does John Hill still make stuff?" I thought all he does is like post his pasta pics on Instagram. And I was like, "Excuse me? What'd he say?" He was like, "Yeah." He said, "Does John Hill even make stuff anymore?" And I was like, oh, you motherfuckers forgot. And it was like the Michael Jordan meme. It was the Michael Jordan meme where I was like, oh, and I took that personally. So then I was like, that
was your Jimmy Butler moment.
That was my Jimmy. Yeah, I was basically
You're not going to give me the 5-year max?
Yeah. And so I faxed myself a letter that said, I'm back. And then I paid a buddy to meet me once a week to help me write the story. Like to like be like, hey, okay, what's your opening act? Write that. Come back next week with the second part. You know, and after 4 weeks, like you really got me there. And then I wrote the film in a month and I was really happy with it. And then COVID happened. So I was ready to shoot it, but then I couldn't. Okay. I was like, hey, you know what? In independent filmmaking, like this was, you know, before the vaccine, before everything. I was like, I just got to pause. Like, look, you've waited 10 years. What this COVID thing will be over in a month, right? You know, like so
2 weeks, we'll be back to work.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine. So anyway, long story short, that we're back. And at the beginning of this year, I was ready to start it, and we started. And it's been going great, man. So I got a bunch of private investors working on this film or donating money. And then the other half is this Kickstarter. And I love Kickstarters. I love crowdfunding. I love Patreons. You know, like we have one for the Super Hoopers. I just love the idea that a bunch of people who believe in you and want to support you can give you a little bit of money to make something big. Yeah, you know, absolutely. And I just love that. Like so there's some people that feel weird about asking for money and being a Kickstarter and things like that. I'm like, no, man, like I'm trying to make a movie. You ever see the movie Before Sunset?
No.
Before Sunrise with Ethan Hawke?
No, I've never seen that.
Well, if your audience has, it's the Asian Before Sunset. You know, it's a very personal film. It takes place in one day and it's based off that day. So the guy who loses his dad, he comes back to LA. He, you know, he's hoping to do this comedy show. There used to be my friend Matt Bronger. He's a comedian. He used to throw. Oh yeah, so great guy, funniest guy.
I used to work in the comedy industry. So.
Oh really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, New York for a few years.
Oh okay. So he used to do this backyard birthday party every year, and every year, like people whoever was in the show, like got a TV show the next year. Like I saw Nick Kroll, Garfunkel and Oates, Tig Notaro, Kumail, Pete Holmes, all
the hipster favorites.
All the hipster favorites, like in my friend Dave and Michelle's backyard doing a show. So the film is this guy, he wants to come back. He wants to do the show. He goes to the coffee house. He meets this girl. She lost her dog. They go on the day, kind of spending the day together as he tries to get ready for this comedy show. He goes to the show. He bombs. Like he tries to, like during the day, they're like, no, dude, you ghosted us for like 6 months. Where the hell have you been? And he's like, you sure you should be doing jokes? Like your dad just died. And he's like, oh, I got this. And he fails miserably. And then yada, yada, yada. He goes back to the show later in the night. And lo and behold, he gets a chance to go on stage. And instead of hack jokes, he tells what is the true story of the last time I saw my dad alive. And that's the movie. It's a small, simple film. It's a comedy, believe it or not. I was
gonna say it sounds dramedy-ish. I would say.
Yeah. I mean,
which I love. I personally, those are like I am a sucker for like literally anything that is like indie, quirky, like dramedy stuff. Like I'm for that.
So. Yeah. I always like to say my stuff is comedy with heart. Like you're gonna laugh. There's a lot of fun characters, a lot of weirdos in there. Like it's definitely like the way that, you know, my dad taught me was like, you know, my dad was the guy who made jokes at funerals. Like when his dad died, my dad was like roasting him. You know what I mean? It was like okay, like we were gonna laugh.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's how we cope.
You know? Yeah, that's how we cope. And
that's my entire family does the same thing.
And I think that's the best way, right? Like I always tell people, like, dude, when I die, you better make fun of me like all the time. Yeah. Like I want you to rip me apart. You know what I mean? Like have me on. Like when I die, Trill, like every year, have me on as a guest. And then just have it be a blank episode. And be like, John, I think you're on mute. John, you're on mute.
I'll send you a text like Jason Tatum did to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, yeah, do that, please. So yeah, man, we're super excited. I got a great crew. We just casted the 2 leads. We're really excited, and yeah, we're raising money, man. So we have to hit 40K, I think, in like 12 days, maybe 10 days by the time this comes out, and it's all or nothing. So if we don't get the money, we don't get the movie. But you know, the amount of people who have come out of the woodwork in my life has been like insane. Like I had an elementary school teacher. He was my favorite teacher. He passed away. His daughter I knew in high school, she saw the Kickstarter, wrote me and was like, you know what? I know my dad would donate. Like he cared about you. And like, you know, for like, I have this thing, you know, it's like when you lose a parent or something, like I call it the club. You're in this club, which is painful, you know, and everyone knows because it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like my wife's never going to meet my dad. That's just it. She's only going to know about him through stories or, you know, and I grew up in a world without digital cameras, you know, so there's only a few photos of him, you know, there's no tapes of him, like, you know, kind of thing.
Jesus.
So like, I think we're hoping to try to make a movie that is like, you know, for anyone who's lost someone, or anyone who's gone through some struggles, you know, and like, hopefully we can look, I'm nothing can change it. There's nothing you can say to someone who loses a parent to make it feel better. But if you can distract them for a little bit and hope to get them to kind of see a different side of it and laugh, like then I think I've done my job. So that's what we're trying to do. So if you know, any listeners wants to help, you can go to you know, abovethecloudsfilm.com. There's a link there. Trill said he'll put it in the description.
Please support it if you can. It sounds great. Honestly, I can't wait to watch it after you guys make it, because you will hit your goal. I guarantee you. It's really cool to see the support that you guys have got for just people coming out for you and donating and everything. And I really hope that you guys do reach it so that we can watch the movie, dude.
Dude, thank you, man. And my cinematographer, I went to college with him. He's my best friend. He shot a lot of I Think You Should Leave.
Oh, nice. There we go.
He does that.
There's a connection.
He does. He shot all the comedy stuff in LA. Comedy Bang Bang, Sarah Silverman. He did SNL this year, the first half.
Nice.
So it's going to look incredible. We got the music producer has produced for Mac Miller, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole. He's my buddy from college. Nice Rec. The actors are incredible. So I think it's the horse to bet on. I wouldn't bet on you know, the Sixers and Doc Rivers. Maybe don't listen to me on Warriors in 5. But this film, I think this is the one to bet on. So
all right, dude.
And if you can't financially support, that's cool too, man. I get it.
Retweet it, share it,
retweet it, and just like, you know, just mentally in your head, give good vibes across the way.
There you go.
Because there's a lot of Philly references in there too. That I think people get. So
you know Philly people, they literally only like Philly things. So
yes, exactly. Like, so this is
I had an old boss who was from England, and whenever she was like kind of a public figure, and we would put her onto the news, and they were like, yeah, kind of play down your English accent a little bit, because people in Philly only like Philly people.
Yeah. That's very true.
But,
that is very true.
Once again, thank you, John, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Guys, go support John's Kickstarter. The link is in the description. And I can't wait to have you on next time. And hopefully next time you're on, you know, you're making the film or it's already out and we can watch it.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, bud. Peace.